Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and I'm delighted to have the author Devon Eriksen, author of the book Theft of Fire. Devon, thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So, you probably get this a lot with the interviews, but first I wanted to ask, what's the pitch for Theft of Fire?
The Expanse, if written by Heinlein,
Okay.
which is actually a line from a review in Analog Magazine, which I particularly liked, so I'm stealing it, and it's mine now.
Oh, perfect. Hey, you know what? They wrote about your book. That's I can really see that. This book is very much it's got some kind of hard science fiction where you're understanding how everything's working, but it doesn't feel too technical in places. How did you balance making it all the science in it work while also not dwelling too much on it?
Oh, that's the result of a lot of very deliberate chess moves behind the scenes. So I figured as I was writing it that there's two types of audience. Mm-hmm. There's the guys who lean more towards wanting to learn something or wanting to check your math on the back of an envelope. And there's the people who kind of just want the science fiction story.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, how do I pull in both of those groups? And there's a little trick I did where there's three main characters. Each one of them is an expert in a particular branch of science and not an expert in the others. So whenever I had a scene where there was some technical issue, there was one person who knew exactly what was going on and cared about it. Mm-hmm. There was one person who didn't know how this all worked, but did care about it. And there was one person who didn't know and didn't care. So this allows you to weave into the dialogue and the description two levels of exposition. One, here's what you have for the science readers that care, and here's the takeaway. Like, okay, this is how long it will take us to get to Sedna, or this is what this device basically is in one sentence. And I found that's been very successful because I have had positive reviews from everyone from scientists who have asteroids named after them to grandmothers who read mostly romance. So that landed rather well, I think.
The book is very, I would describe it as being very character focused. As you see on the cover, there's really just the three main characters of Melinda Foxgrove, Marcus Warnock, and Leela. How did you decide on those three characters as the main core of the story?
Well, it was always going to be a little bit character driven. That's why I designed the cover the way I did. But since this was my first novel, since I was deciding to, okay, I'm going to start doing this now that I've retired from software engineering, I'm like, okay, I don't want a huge cast of characters. I'm going to make this tight. I'm going to make it three people in a spaceship.
Okay. And when you were plotting out for the series, did you know how far the whole series was going to go, or do you more of a pantser and just know how book one was going to go?
Oh, I am the architect of architects. All four books are planned out. By the time I had finished the manuscript for the first book, I knew how the last one was going to end. I have actually written the last chapter of the last book already, so I know exactly
You're
where
pulling
it is
Robert
going.
Jordan just in case.
Oh yes. And the only surprise really was that it ended up being 4 books instead of 3.
Yeah.
And that's because when I started working on the second book, I discovered that all of the things that had to happen between the first book and the last book, no matter how much I jumped up and down on the lid of the suitcase, I could not get it to close.
That's a good...
So I had to split it into 2 volumes, and that means doing some structural alterations because 2 books are not one book chopped in half. You
Right.
need a satisfying conclusion in the middle.
Exactly. Do you have an update on when book 2 is expected to release?
Well, it has been considerably delayed due to some cancer in the family.
Yeah, I heard about
But that's cleared up now and everyone is going to live.
That's great.
So I am back on track, and by my projections, I should have the manuscript for the second one done by the end of August, which means that we are looking at an early fall release date.
Excellent. This book is self-published.
Yes.
Why, although I will say it has a magnificent cover and design, how did you guys choose to go with self-publishing instead of traditional?
Well, I looked at both, but there was a particular moment when I decided I had to be in control of my own destiny. Mm-hmm. And that was when my freelance editor that I had hired, she is one of the book's greatest cheerleaders. She's a lovely woman. Very enthusiastically shoved my sample chapters in front of an editor from a major publishing house at a con. And he looks at it, tilts his head from side to side, reads about 2 sentences, then takes the sample chapters and holds them out to me like this, as if I had handed him a dead spider. And he said, "Rewrite it in third person. You do know how to write in third person, don't you?" And I'm sort of looking at him like, is this person perhaps drunk? Because, and then he says, "Heinlein could write in first person, but you are not the next Heinlein." And I'm not exaggerating too far on the tone here. And I realized that this was someone who didn't necessarily understand that authors have a toolbox. Mm-hmm. And things like tense and perspective are tools in that toolbox. So you select them based on what it is you want to craft. First or third person is not an arbitrary choice. It is a design choice. Mm-hmm. So, he could have asked me, "You chose to write this in first person. That's an unusual choice. Why did you make that choice?" And then we could have had a discussion. Mm-hmm. But I realized that this person was very full of what he already knew. Mm-hmm. And this represented this is the level of creative freedom you will have if you decide to go with a publisher. This is the level of pushback you will get. And I want total creative control. Mm-hmm. So I decided to do it all myself. And between the 3 of us in my little family in our home in East Nowhere, Tennessee, we learned to be a publishing house. We learned to do all the things you have to do to get from manuscript to here is your Amazon page where you may order it, and believe me, there are a lot. We marketed it ourselves. We did a Kickstarter for the audiobook ourselves, raised $42,000, which is not bad for your first Kickstarter. Yeah. And I did the audiobook myself. I hired all the voice actors. I hired sound engineer. That's coming out perhaps in a couple of weeks. We're almost done. So it's been a great journey. I've been very, very satisfied with that decision. I've since been offered publishing contracts, and I've rejected them all. Oh, okay. Because it turns out that if you go self-published in this day and age, you get to keep all the creative control and you get to keep all the money.
So what would have you found to be the biggest challenge in producing the books? Is it something with the editing process, or is it the audiobook process, or what is the thing that you had to learn that was the most time-consuming and difficult to learn?
Writing a good book.
Okay.
Ultimately, there are lots of challenges in being an author, and there are lots of challenges in being self-published. And, if we had infinite time, I could talk your ear off and go down the rabbit hole on each one of them. But ultimately, as an author, everything is based on this platform of having written something people want to read. And that is something so many people want to do, and so few people can actually do well.
So I did want to get into an interesting topic that is related to the book, which is the I always say it wrong, so I need to make sure the SPSFC, which was a competition that authors can put in their books, and it's for science fiction self-pub, and your book was in it.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, first there was just a rule change that was really bizarre, and then there was the announcement that they had just kicked your book out. And it was shocking, and it was a big deal in the publishing space. And I wanted to talk about that for a few minutes. To start out with, from your perspective, what did they tell you about it, and how the process happened?
Oh, well, the first that I found out about this whole thing was, you have been banned from the competition. That was the first message I received, and it's third hand, mind you. They didn't contact me. And my first reaction was, what competition? I had no idea. My agent handles Christine, a member of my family who's acting as my agent, handles a lot of minor publicity stuff. So there was this
publicity stuff.
It is a pretty small contest. It's for independently published books, and she had entered this, and this had not sort of risen to the level of being on my radar. And so I get this message, you have been canceled, sort of third hand through the rumor mill. And I'm like, who are these people? What's going on here? And it turns out that they've been running this contest for several years, and apparently they have an audience that is largely of one political persuasion, and I am of the other. And when I started getting passed on to the finals, some, I guess, of the other authors looked up my Twitter feed and found out that I was of the opposite political persuasion, which they consider to be not just a simple matter of disagreement, but of great moral evil. And so they didn't have any rules that I had violated because they didn't have any rules.
Yeah.
So they very hurriedly drew up a set of rules and said, okay, now you are banned for being in violation of these. And I'm sort of sitting here scratching my head going, okay. And as it turns out, people are very, very sick of cancel culture. So as this incident became publicly known, suddenly our sales rocketed. I think I repeatedly broke into the top 1,000 books on all of Amazon. Which is
that's a big deal.
That's a lot of books, and so overall, I would have to say, and I wrote some sort of satirical little stories about how crazy this whole process was, and put them on Twitter for my fans, and we all had a good laugh. But 10 out of 10 would get canceled. I did far better off being canceled from the contest than I would have done off winning it. And what's gratifying about this is not really mainly that I sold a lot of books. I mean, that's nice. But what's really gratifying about this is that it shows us that cancel culture is over.
Yeah.
People are so sick of this whole business, this weaponization of politics into fields that have nothing to do with it. Because I don't write preachy science fiction. I don't write science fiction that proselytizes my political point of view. I consider that to be a very, very cheap author trick, and I don't like it when authors do it, because you're basically having an argument with a sock puppet that's on one of your hands that's just there to be wrong.
And it was interesting following this, for one reason, is that a lot of other authors were fed up with the cancellation, and they also said,
they quit in solidarity, and most of them saw large sales spikes as a result.
And some of them aren't even necessarily of your political persuasion. It was just that they just do not like this process.
It's not about the politics. It's about this idea that you have a sort of a cult within one political persuasion. It's not identical. It's sort of a subgroup where they've got a code of how life should be, and anyone who disagrees with the slightest part of it is literally the reincarnation of Hitler. And we must dissociate ourselves from them and hurt them in any way possible. And because this political persuasion had control of some of the social media sites a couple of years ago, they were able to manufacture the illusion of consensus. And a lot of companies and institutions went along with this because they were afraid of a widespread public opinion that didn't actually exist. And now that a lot of the social media censorship has opened up, we get to see that these people are not a majority. They were never a majority. They were never anywhere near a majority. They're simply a bunch of crazy people writing letters in their mom's basement. And what we need to do is just ignore them and let them gradually excommunicate each other until there's only one left.
Yeah. I did want to ask to get in further on it, because I was curious. Did they ever come and say it was like this tweet broke this specific rule? Did they ever give you that specific reason?
No.
And that's what, that's what bothered me about it more was I understand removing an author that you have a problem with, but at least say what the problem is.
I think the actual management of the competition found themselves in a very difficult position, because ultimately they're beholden to their audience. And if their audience is crazy people, they have to appease the crazy people. But ultimately, there was no real official notice to me. They never communicated directly to me. And the only thing I saw was a rationalization by, I believe it was one of the judges, a couple of weeks later, whereby the major excuse was that some people who were upset about my being canceled from the contest had said mean things to them online. And this wasn't me, but it was people who liked me, and I could have stopped them by saying something. So apparently I was banned from the contest by not policing the behavior of people who were upset that I was banned from the contest. And I'm just sort of sitting there wondering what direction time flows in for these people.
I made a video, covering the news when all that happened, and I got some people who were disappointed, and they were like, "You didn't cover it from their perspective. You only showed the one perspective." And I'm like, "That's because they never gave me anything concrete. I don't know why they canceled you because they didn't. If they had said it, I would have included it."
Yes, their perspective has never really been made clear, and was was incomprehensible when it was articulated. And I think ultimately the reason for that is that people don't like to make their position clear when their position is untenable. Their position is basically, you voted Republican, we hate you.
So I have one more question before we leave, which is there anything about book 2 that you can tease for us? Let us, like something that, whether it's a plot idea or something people can look forward to?
Well, if they're here at LibertyCon, they get to hear a reading from the manuscript later this afternoon.
Nice. Okay.
But for those who are not so fortunate, I can say that the first one took place mostly inside a single spacecraft traveling through the solar system between 3 main characters. And you saw little hints of what the post-terrestrial society was like. Mm-hmm. Well, in the sequel, In Box of Trouble, that perspective opens up and we get a very intimate first-person portrait of my vision of the future of a colonized solar system.
Excellent. I am looking forward to reading it this fall, if assuming we were able to get into time to understand
it's a
stuff.
prediction, not a promise, but it's a pretty firm prediction. We're out of the woods at last.
So if people did want to follow your Twitter or anything else, or your author page, anything like that, where should they go?
At Devon Eriksen on Twitter. DevonEriksen.com has a long list of links to all the places that they can find me on the net. And my books and audiobooks and whatnot can be ordered directly from the website. So DevonEriksen.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the channel.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.